Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
It was a Tuesday night in October when she first walked into my life. I remember because Tuesdays were supposed to be quiet, the theater dark, the cast gone home. Just me and my notes and the ghost light casting long shadows across the empty stage. I was working late, as usual, polishing the final draft of my new play. 3 years I'd spent on that manuscript, 3 years of bleeding onto paper, crafting every word, every pause, every breath. Then she appeared. The front door of the Meridian. Theater creaked open. I really needed to get those hinges fixed, and in walked this woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a film noir, all sharp edges and dangerous curves. Dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, revealing a neck I immediately wanted to trace with my fingertips. She wore that leather jacket like armor, and when she moved like she owned the world. "We're closed," I called out, not looking up from my script. I was used to stragglers, tourists who didn't read the posted hours. Actors looking for their big break at all the wrong times. I know. Her voice was honey and smoke, with just enough edge to make me finally raise my head. "I'm looking for Stella Martinez." The way she said my name, like she was tasting it, rolling it around on her tongue, made something flutter in my chest. I stood up, suddenly aware of my coffee-stained sweater and the fact that I'd been running on 4 hours of sleep for the past week. "That's me, and you are?" She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that could start wars or end them, depending on her mood. "Megan Cross, I heard you're putting on a play. Auditions are next week, appointments only." I gestured toward the door, but she didn't move. Instead, she walked closer, her boots echoing in the empty space. "What if I told you I don't need an appointment?" The audacity should have annoyed me. Should have. Instead, I found myself studying the way the stage lights caught the green flecks. In her dark eyes, the way her lips curved just slightly at the corners, like she was always on the verge of laughing at some private joke. "I tell you that's not how this works. This is professional theater, not some high school drama club." She laughed then, a sound that was part music, part rebellion. "Professional, huh? Is that why you're here at midnight, talking to yourself?" Heat crept up my neck. I wasn't talking to myself. I was running lines, I know. "I watched you for a few minutes before I came in." She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. "You're good, really good, but you're playing it safe." "Excuse me? Your character, the way you're reading her lines. She's supposed to be passionate, desperate, willing to risk everything for love, but you're holding back." I crossed my arms. "Defensive. And what would you know about it? Are you an actress?" "On a lot of things." She moved closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume mixed with something else, leather and engine oil and possibility. "But right now, I'm someone who wants to audition for your play." I should have said no. Should have pointed to the door and watched those dangerous curves walk away. Instead, I heard myself saying, "Fine, but I don't have all night." That was my first lie. I had nothing but time, nothing but this empty theater, and a script that had become my entire world. But something about Megan Cross made me want to pretend I was busier, more important, less affected by the way she looked at me, like she could see straight through all my carefully constructed defenses. She nodded toward the stage. "What do you want me to read?" I flipped through my script, looking for something that would shut her down quickly, prove that whatever game she was playing, I wasn't interested. My fingers found Act 2, Scene 3, Elena's monologue. The one where she confesses her love to a woman who can never love her back. It was brutal, raw, the kind of scene that left audiences in tears and actors emotionally drained. "Here." I tore out the pages and handed them to her. "Elena's confession. You have 5 minutes to look it over." She glanced at the pages, then set them aside. I don't need 5 minutes. You should read. I said I don't need them. And then she became Elena. I've been in theater for 15 years. I've seen Tony winners, Oscar nominees, actors who could make you believe the moon was made of cheese if they said it with enough conviction. But what Megan did on that stage, what she became, was something else entirely. She didn't just recite Elena's words. She inhabited them, made them her own, turned my carefully crafted dialogue into something living and breathing and absolutely devastating. When she spoke about love, about desire, about the kind of wanting that consumes you from the inside out, I believed every word. More than that, I felt every word. She finished with tears in her eyes, real tears, not the glycerin kind, and when she looked at me, I realized I was crying too. Jesus, I whispered. She wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Too much? No, it was ... I fumbled for words, something that never happened to me. Words were my life, my profession, my everything. But Megan Cross had just stolen my language along with my breath. It was perfect. 2 weeks later, the Meridian was buzzing with nervous energy. Audition day. I'd put notices in all the usual places, reached out to agents, posted on the casting websites. 37 people had scheduled appointments to read for various roles. In Echoes of Tomorrow, my baby, my masterpiece, my shot at proving that small theater could be just as powerful as anything Broadway had to offer. I sat at the table in the 3rd row, my assistant director Jake beside me, casting director Patricia to my left. We'd already seen 26 hopefuls, and I was starting to lose faith. They were all technically competent, professionally trained, and absolutely soulless. They hit their marks, projected their voices, followed direction, but none of them had that spark, that indefinable something that transforms words on a page into truth. Next, Patricia called, and I looked down at my schedule. Marga Cross, 2:30 p.m. I frowned. I don't have anyone named Marga Cross scheduled. She's here for the lead, Jake said, checking his clipboard. Before I could respond, she walked onto the stage. Same leather jacket, same confident stride, same smile that made my pulse quicken despite my best efforts to remain professional. Good afternoon, she said, and I could feel Jake and Patricia both perk up with interest. I'm here to audition for Elena. You're not on the schedule, Patricia said, flipping through her papers. My mistake. Megan's eyes found mine across the darkened theater. I thought we had an understanding. Patricia looked confused. Jake looked intrigued. I felt exposed, like she'd just announced to everyone that we'd shared something in this space, something private and electric and completely inappropriate. Do you have headshots? Resume? Patricia continued. No headshots, no resume. Megan never broke eye contact with me. It's just this. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the same script pages I'd given her 2 weeks ago. They were worn now, folded and refolded, covered in notes written in red ink. I've been working on Elena, she said simply. Jake leaned over to whisper. In my ear, should we let her read? I said, surprising myself. Stella, we have protocols. Let her read. Megan smiled, and I felt something warm and dangerous unfurl in my chest. She positioned herself center stage, no preparation, no warm-up. Just stepped into the light and became someone else entirely. But this time, she wasn't doing Elena's confession. Instead, she launched into the opening monologue, Elena's introduction, where she talks about the theater being her church, about the stage being the only place she can tell the truth. It was my favorite scene in the entire play, the one I'd written thinking about my own relationship with this art form that had saved me and enslaved me in equal measure. Megan didn't just perform it, she understood it. Every pause, every inflection, every moment of vulnerability and strength. She took my words and made them sing. When she finished, the theater was silent. Patricia was scribbling notes furiously. Jake was staring with his mouth slightly open, and I was trying to remember how to breathe. "Thank you," Patricia said finally. "We'll be in touch." "Actually," I heard myself say, "could you stick around? I'd like to work through a few scenes with you." Jake shot me a look. Patricia raised an eyebrow. We had 7 more actors scheduled, industry professionals with impressive credits and proper headshots. "Now?" Megan asked. Now. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. We ran through Elena's major scenes, and with each one, Megan proved that what had happened that night 2 weeks ago wasn't a fluke. She was instinctive, fearless, completely present in every moment. She took direction beautifully, but also brought her own interpretation to the role, finding nuances in my writing that even I hadn't fully understood. By the time we finished, Jake and Patricia had already started whispering about callback schedules and contract negotiations, but I barely heard them. I was watching Megan as she gathered her things. The way she moved with that same confident grace, whether she was delivering a monologue or just picking up her water bottle. "Megan," I called as she headed toward the exit. She turned, eyebrows raised. "The part is yours, if you want it." Her smile could have powered the theater's lights for a week. "I want it." And that was how Megan Cross became Elena Santos, how a woman with no resume and no headshots landed the lead role in my play. It should have been a disaster. Instead, it was the beginning of everything. Rehearsals started the following Monday in the cramped studio space beneath the theater. 12 actors, 1 director, and enough sexual tension to power a small city. Though I was the only one who seemed to notice that last part, Megan arrived. Early every day, leather jacket replaced by comfortable rehearsal clothes that somehow made her even more beautiful. Faded jeans that hugged her curves, vintage band t-shirts, boots that had clearly walked 1,000 miles. She'd pull her hair back in a messy ponytail and settle into character work with the kind of focus I'd only seen in the most dedicated professionals. The problem was, she was also completely undisciplined. "Elena wouldn't say it like that," she announced on day 3, stopping mid-scene. "I'm sorry," I looked up from my notes. "This line." She pointed to her script. "I never meant for this to happen. It feels like an apology, but Elena doesn't apologize for loving someone. She might regret the timing, the circumstances, but not the feeling itself." The other actors shifted uncomfortably. Directors don't like being challenged in front of the cast, and everyone knew it. "The line stays as written," I said evenly. "But the line stays." She stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged and continued with the scene. But I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes, and I knew this wasn't over. It wasn't. "Elena's more physical than you're letting her be," she said after we'd wrapped for the day. The other actors had gone home, but Megan lingered, pretending to organize her script while I gathered my things. "Elena is passionate, not aggressive. There's a difference between physical and aggressive." She stood up, stretching, and I tried not to notice the way her shirt rode up slightly, revealing a strip of tan skin. "She's a woman who works with her hands, who builds sets and fixes lights. Her body language should reflect that." She was right, and we both knew it. I'd written Elena as a theater technician, partly because I wanted to explore the idea of someone who creates beauty from behind the scenes, someone whose art is invisible to the audience. But in my direction, I'd been playing her too safe, too contained. "Show me," I said. Megan moved to the center of the room and launched into Elena's Act 1 argument with her ex-lover. But this time, she didn't just stand there and deliver the lines. She paced, she gestured, she used the space like Elena would like someone comfortable with physical labor, someone who wasn't afraid to take up room in the world. It was better, much better. "Okay," I admitted. "You're right, I know," she grinned. Can I make another suggestion? If you must, Elena and Carmen's first kiss. You have it happen off stage. It's more impactful that way. Let the audience. Imagine bullshit, I blinked. Excuse me? You're hiding behind artistic choice because you're afraid to put real intimacy on stage. She moved closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. Elena's story is about a woman learning to love without shame. How can you tell that story if you're too ashamed to show the love? My mouth went dry. I'm not ashamed of anything. No? Then why does Elena kiss Carmen in the wings instead of center stage where the audience can see her courage? Because watching you kiss another woman on stage every night would kill me, I thought but didn't say. I'll consider it, I said instead. She smiled, satisfied, and gathered her things. Good. Oh, and Stella. Yeah. Elena wouldn't hesitate before that kiss. She'd been wanting Carmen for months. When the moment finally comes, she'd be hungry for it. She left me standing there in that empty rehearsal room, wondering if we were still talking about the play. A week later, I moved the kiss on stage. I told myself it was because Megan was right about the artistic integrity, about Elena's journey requiring that visibility. I told myself it had nothing to do with the way my stomach twisted every time Megan ran lines with Rebecca, the actress playing Carmen. I told myself a lot of things. None of them were true. Let's work the kiss, I announced during Thursdays. Rehearsal. Megan looked up from her script, eyebrows raised. Finally, Rebecca giggled nervously. She was sweet, just graduated from Juilliard, technically proficient, but still finding her confidence. The kiss was going to be her first on-stage romantic scene with another woman, and she'd been quietly freaking out about it for days. It's just like any other stage kiss, I told them both. Choreographed, professional, part of the storytelling. Right, Rebecca said, though she looked like she might throw up. Becca, relax. Megan moved to stand beside her. It's going to be fine. We'll take it slow, figure out what works. They ran through the scene, leading up to the kiss, Elena finally confessing her feelings, Carmen's shock and confusion, the moment of silence before passion takes over. When they reached the crucial moment, Megan cupped Rebecca's face gently and leaned in. It was perfect. Tender, real, exactly what the scene needed. It was also destroying me. I watched from the third row as Megan kissed another woman with the kind of passion I'd only dreamed about, and I felt something sharp and ugly twist in my chest. Jealousy was unprofessional. Jealousy was ridiculous. Jealousy was exactly what I was feeling as I watched the woman I was falling for bring my words to life with someone else. Beautiful, I called out when they broke apart. Let's run it again. They did. Again and again, until the kiss looked natural, until Rebecca stopped blushing and started kissing back, until I thought I might actually lose my mind sitting there watching. That's enough for today, I announced abruptly. But we haven't finished. The scene, Rebecca said. We'll pick it up tomorrow. The actors filed out, chattering about dinner plans and weekend auditions. Megan hung back, as had become her habit. You okay? She asked once we were alone. Fine. Why wouldn't I be fine? She tilted her head, studying me with those two perceptive eyes. You seem tense. It's been a long day. Stella. She moved closer, and I caught that scent again, leather, and something uniquely her. What's really going on? I could have. Should have lied. Instead, I heard myself saying, it's hard watching you with her. With Rebecca, it's stupid. Professional jealousy, probably. You're just so good at making those moments real. Megan was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, want to know a secret? I nodded. Every time I kiss Rebecca in that scene, I'm pretending she's someone else. My heart stopped. Who? Instead of answering, she closed the distance between us. Her hand came up to cup my cheek, the same gentle gesture she'd used with Rebecca, but this time it made my skin burn. "Can I show you how Elena would really kiss Carmen?" She whispered. I should have said no. Should have stepped back, maintained professional boundaries, remembered that I was the director and she was my lead actress, and this was exactly the kind of complication that could destroy a production. Instead, I leaned into her touch and whispered, "Yes." Megan's lips were softer than I'd imagined, and I'd been imagining them for weeks. She kissed me the way Elena would kiss Carmen, hungry, desperate, like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. Her other hand found my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space between us, until I could feel her heart beating against my chest. I melted into her, my hands fisting in her t-shirt, kissing her back with all the want I'd been trying to hide. She tasted like coffee and possibility, like every risk I'd never been brave enough to take. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "That's how Elena would kiss Carmen," Megan said, her forehead resting against mine. "That's how Megan kisses Stella," I replied. She smiled, that dangerous smile that had walked into my theater and turned my world upside down. "I've been wanting to do that since the first night we met. Even when I was being awful to you, especially then. There's something incredibly sexy about a woman who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to fight for it." I laughed, giddy and terrified and completely out of my depth. "What happens now? Now we see where this goes." She kissed me again, softer this time, a promise instead of a question. And as her lips moved against mine in that empty rehearsal room, I realized I was about to find out just how dangerous it could be to fall in love with your leading lady. What followed were 3 of the most intense weeks of my life. By day, we were director and actress, professional and focused. Megan took direction, ran lines with the other actors, worked through blocking with the same dedication she brought to everything else. I gave notes, adjusted scenes, pretended that. My pulse didn't quicken every time she walked into the room. By night, when the theater emptied and the ghost light threw long shadows across the stage, we became something else entirely. "The scene in Act 2, Megan said one evening, finding me hunched over my laptop in the front row, where Elena talks about her ex." I looked up. "What about it?" "It feels like backstory for backstory's sake. Like you needed to explain why. She's afraid to love again, but you didn't really want to dive into it." I saved my document and turned to face her. Over the past few weeks, I'd learned that when Megan had thoughts about the script, they were usually worth hearing. "What would you change?" She climbed onto the stage, settling cross-legged in the center. "Tell me about your ex." "What does that have to do with Elena's story comes from somewhere real?" "Your writing is too specific, too honest for it to be completely fictional. So tell me about the woman who broke your heart." I could have deflected, should have maintained that boundary between my personal life and my art. Instead, I found myself talking about Sarah, about the 3 years we'd spent together, about how she'd left me for a man because it was easier, because her parents would approve, because loving women was a phase she'd grown out of. How did it end? Megan asked. Badly. She showed up at my apartment one day with her engagement ring, wanting me to be happy for her. Were you? I threw her out, literally, told her I never wanted to see her again. Megan nodded thoughtfully. And how did that feel? The throwing her out part, powerful, terrible, necessary. That's what's missing from Elena's story, the anger. You give her all this pain and longing, but you never let her be furious about what was taken from her. She was right. In protecting Elena from my own rage, I'd made her too much of a victim, too passive in her own story. So what do you suggest? Megan stood up, started pacing the way she did when she was working through character choices. What? If the ex doesn't just leave Elena for a man, What if she comes back, tries to keep Elena as a secret while she lives her straight life? That's cruel, exactly. And what if Elena says yes at first because she's desperate and still in love? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Have you been in that situation? Megan stopped pacing. Haven't you? I had. Before Sarah, there had been Jennifer, who wanted to keep me as her dirty secret. I'd said yes at first, grateful for any scraps of attention, until I finally found the self-respect to walk away. Write that scene, Megan said. Elena's moment of rage when she finally tells her ex exactly what she thinks of being someone's secret. Give her that power. I did. That night, after Megan left, I rewrote Elena's entire backstory. Gave her the anger and the agency I'd never allowed myself to have. When I handed Megan the new pages the next morning, she read them with tears in her eyes. "This is it," she said. "This is Elena." It was also Stella, more than I'd ever admitted to anyone, including myself. Everything changed on a Tuesday night. In November, we were deep into tech rehearsals, the most stressful part of any production. Lights were malfunctioning, sound cues were missed, and everyone was running on coffee and nervous energy. I was in my usual spot in the third row, headset, calling out adjustments to the technical crew. "Elena's entrance in scene 3 needs more light," I said into my mic. "She's disappearing into the shadows." "Copy that," came the response from the lighting booth. We ran the scene again. Megan entered from stage left, hit her mark, delivered. Her lines with the same intensity she brought to every rehearsal. But something was different. There was a tension in her shoulders, a careful quality to her movements that hadn't been there before. During the dinner break, I found her on the loading dock behind the theater, smoking a cigarette. I didn't know she smoked. "Everything okay?" I asked. She took a long drag before answering. "We need to talk." Those 4 words every relationship. Dreads, my stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" She flicked the cigarette away and turned to face me. In the harsh fluorescent light of the dock, she looked tired, older than her years. "I got a call today from my agent." I waited. "There's interest in me from Hollywood." "That's good news, isn't it?" "It's complicated." She leaned against the loading dock door. "The interest is contingent on my image, my marketability." I still didn't understand. "Meaning?" "Meaning they want me available, single, no messy personal life that might complicate their investment." The words hit me like a physical blow. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them I'd consider it." "Consider what, exactly?" She met my eyes, and I saw the apology there before she spoke. "There's someone else, Richard Kress, the director. His people think we'd make a good couple." For publicity, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. A good couple, for show, red carpet appearances, photo ops. Nothing real. "But you'd have to pretend it was real." "Yes, which means pretending we're not." She nodded miserably. I turned away, staring out at the alley behind the theater. 3 weeks ago, this woman had been nothing to me. A disruption, an inconvenience, someone who didn't belong in my carefully ordered world. Now the thought of losing her felt like drowning. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I don't know. This is my chance, Stella." The kind of opportunity most actors would kill for, I know. But I don't want to lose this, what we have. I turned back to face her. "You might not have a choice." "There's always a choice, is there?" "Because it sounds like you've already made yours." Before she could respond, Jake appeared in the doorway. "Places in 5, he called. We went back inside. The rehearsal continued. Megan delivered every line perfectly, hit every mark, gave no indication that her world had just shifted on its axis, but I could see the distance she was putting between us. The way she avoided eye contact, the careful space she maintained whenever we had to be close. After the cast left, I stayed behind, pretending to work on notes while actually staring at the same page for an hour. When I finally locked up the theater and walked to my car, I found Megan waiting for me. "This doesn't have to change anything," she said. "Doesn't it? We can be careful, discreet." I looked at her standing there in the parking lot, beautiful and desperate and asking me to be her secret. "No," I said. "Stella, I won't be someone's hidden shame. Not again. It wouldn't be like that. It would be exactly like that." I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing there beneath the broken streetlight. In my rearview mirror, I watched her figure grow smaller and smaller until she disappeared entirely. The next few weeks were professional torture. We had a show to open, which meant I had to work closely with Megan every day while pretending my heart wasn't breaking a little more each time she looked at me. The rest of the cast sensed the tension but couldn't quite identify it. Jake kept asking if everything was okay. Rebecca, bless her, tried to play mediator without understanding what she was mediating. "Maybe you should talk to her," she suggested one afternoon after a particularly stilted rehearsal. "There's nothing to talk about." "Right, that's why you've both been acting like strangers for 2 weeks." But Megan and I weren't acting like strangers. Strangers would have been easier. Instead, we were acting like former lovers, trying to pretend we'd never touched each other, never shared secrets in empty theaters, never discovered that sometimes the most perfect scenes are the ones that happen when no one else is watching. The worst part was that she was still brilliant. Every night, she stepped onto that stage and became Elena completely, delivering my words with a depth and honesty that took my breath away. She made my play better than I'd ever imagined it could be. She also made it impossible to watch. Elena's story is about a woman learning to love without shame. She told me that first night when she challenged me to move the kiss on stage. But every time I watched her perform those scenes, all I could think about was how she was choosing. Shame in her real life, choosing to hide who she was for the sake of a career opportunity. The irony was suffocating. Opening night arrived with all the usual chaos. Flowers and good luck cards cluttered the dressing rooms. The lobby filled with friends and family and critics, all buzzing with anticipation. I stood in the wings wearing my lucky black dress, watching the actors run through their pre-show rituals. Megan was in her dressing room, door closed. I hadn't seen her since the final dress rehearsal 2 nights before, when she delivered Elena's closing monologue with such raw emotion that half the crew was in tears. 5 minutes to places, Jake called over the intercom. I should have stayed in the wings. Should have watched from my usual spot in the 3rd row. Instead, I found myself knocking on Megan's dressing room door. "Come in." She was sitting at her makeup table, staring at her reflection. Her costume was perfect, her makeup flawless, but her hands were shaking. "You okay?" "Just nerves." She met my eyes in the mirror. Opening night. "You'll be wonderful. You always are." She turned to face me. "Stella, places everyone. This is your place's call." The intercom crackled off, leaving us in silence. "Whatever you were going to say, save it for after the show," I told her. "Right now, you need to be Elena." She nodded, stood up, squared her shoulders. "Break a leg, director." "Break a leg, leading lady." The show was perfect. Better than perfect. The cast was on fire, the technical elements flawless, the audience completely captivated. From my seat in the house, I watched my words come to life with a power and beauty I'd never imagined possible, and Megan was luminous. She inhabited Elena completely, moving through the story with a grace and intensity that made everyone else on stage better by proximity. When she delivered the final monologue, Elena's declaration that she would no longer apologize for loving who she loved, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including mine. The curtain came down to thunderous applause. The cast took their Bows, Megan got a standing ovation, and I felt my heart break and heal simultaneously as I watched the woman. I loved being celebrated for telling a story about the courage to love openly. The after party was at Sullivan's, the bar across the street from the theater. Cast, crew, friends, and supporters packed the small space, everyone high on adrenaline and alcohol. I made the rounds, accepting congratulations, discussing reviews. That wouldn't come out until tomorrow, pretending my attention wasn't constantly tracking Megan's location in the crowd. She was holding court near the bar, still glowing from the performance, surrounded by admirers. Someone had bought her a drink. Someone else was asking about her process. She looked happy, successful, like she belonged in that circle of attention. I was watching her laugh at something Rebecca said when a man approached her from behind. Tall, expensively dressed, with a kind of confident bearing that screamed industry power. I recognized him from the photos Megan had shown me, Richard Kress. He put his arm around her waist like he owned her. She stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed into the gesture, smiling up at him with an expression I couldn't read from. Across the room, I turned away, suddenly nauseous. Whatever game they were playing, whatever arrangement they had, I didn't need to watch it. I was heading for the exit when someone grabbed my arm. Leaving your own party? Jake appeared beside me, 2 drinks in his hands. I'm tired. You're running away. I'm tired of running away, actually. He followed my gaze to where Megan was now engaged in animated conversation with Richard, his hands still possessively placed on her lower back. Ah, Jake said. Want to talk about it? Not really. Want to get spectacularly drunk instead. I considered it. Rain check? He handed me one of the drinks anyway. For courage. Courage for what? Whatever you're about to do. I looked at the drink, then at Megan, then at Jake's knowing expression. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's been watching you watch her for 2 months. I took a sip of the drink. It was stronger than I expected. What would you do if you were me? I'd probably make a fool of myself in front of everyone. That's encouraging. Or, he said, grinning, I'd wait for the right moment and then remind her why she fell for me in the first place. The theater was dark and empty when we arrived, just the ghost light casting its lonely circle on the stage. Megan had suggested we go somewhere private to talk, and somehow we'd ended up back here, in the place where everything had started. It feels different, she said, looking around the empty space. How so? Smaller. Like it's just a room now, instead of a world. She climbed onto the stage, her heels echoing in the silence. I followed, and we stood center stage where she'd auditioned, where she'd first become Elena, where she'd kiss Rebecca while I watched and pretended it didn't. Destroy me. Tell me about your first time, she said suddenly. My first time what? On stage? The first time you felt like you belonged somewhere? I thought back, remembering being 16 and awkward, auditioning for my high school's production of Our Town. I'd been terrified, convinced I'd make a fool of myself. But when I stepped into those lights and spoke Emily's lines, something clicked into place. I was Emily Webb, I said. Junior year of high school. I'd never acted before, but when I stood up there and talked about choosing to live one day over again, about really seeing the people you love, I felt like I was telling a truth I'd never been able to speak before. That's how I felt tonight. During Elena's final monologue, she turned to face me, like I was finally saying something true. What was true about it? That I'm tired of being afraid, tired of making choices based on what other people want instead of what I want. And what do you want? Instead of answering, she moved closer. In the dim light, she looked exactly like she had that first night, dangerous, beautiful, completely unafraid. I want to tell you something, she said, about why I really came to audition for your play. I'm listening. I'd seen you before. At the coffee shop on 5th Street, you came in every Tuesday morning, ordered the same thing, large coffee, no cream, and one of those ridiculously expensive muffins. I stared at her. You were stalking me? I was working there, behind the counter, and every Tuesday I'd watch. You sit in the corner booth with your laptop and your scripts, completely absorbed in whatever world you were creating. You looked so focused, so passionate about what you were doing. Why didn't you say anything? What was I going to say? Hi, I'm a failed actress who serves your coffee, but I think you're beautiful and I'd love to be in one of your plays. That would have been a start. She laughed. I was convinced you were straight. You seemed so professional, so put together. Not like someone who'd be interested in a girl like me. A girl like you. Messy, impulsive, someone who doesn't know how to play the game. I reached for her hands, marveling at how perfectly they fit in mine. You want to know what I saw that first night you walked in here? She nodded. I saw someone who wasn't afraid of anything. Someone who took up space in the world like she had every right to be there. Someone who made me want to be braver. I was terrified that night. You were perfect. She pulled me closer until there was no space between us, until I could feel her heartbeat against my chest. I'm still terrified, she whispered. Of what? Of choosing wrong. Of losing everything I've worked for. Of losing you. You won't lose me, not if you don't want to. Even if I can't give you what you deserve. A relationship that's not hidden. Someone who's not constantly looking over her shoulder. I thought about it, really considered what she was asking. Could I love someone who came with conditions, who might always have to be careful about how we appeared in public? Could I build something real with someone whose life was partly performance? I don't need perfect, I said finally. I need honest. I need you to choose me, really choose me, not just when it's convenient. She was quiet for so long I thought she might not answer. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out the ring box. Richard asked me to marry him tonight. In front of everyone at the party. My stomach dropped. And I told him I needed time to think about it. She held the box up, studying it in the dim light. Do you know what this represents? She asked. A very expensive mistake. She smiled. Security. A guaranteed career. A life where I never have to worry about making rent or wondering if I'll work again. And what does this represent? I gestured between us, everything else. She walked to the edge of the stage and hurled the ring box into the darkness. It landed somewhere in the orchestra seats with a small thud. That's my answer, she said. My heart started beating again. Are you sure? I'm sure that I'd rather be broke and real than rich and fake. I'm sure that the best parts of Elena came from the parts of me that love you. And I'm sure that if I have to choose between a career built on lies and a life built on truth, I choose truth. I kissed her then, right there center stage, under the ghost light that had watched over so many of our conversations. She kissed me back with the same intensity she brought to everything else, like she was memorizing the moment, like she wanted to make sure she could carry it with her wherever we went from here. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. So what happens now? I asked. Now I call Richard and tell him the engagement is off. I call my agent and tell her I'm choosing my projects based on the work, not the publicity opportunities. And I probably lose a lot of the momentum I've built up. Are you okay with that? I'm terrified of it, but I'm more terrified of losing who I am. She took my hands again, and I could feel her trembling slightly. There's something else, she said. What? I got another offer. A small independent film shooting in Portland. The director saw the play last week and wants to meet with me. That's wonderful. It would mean leaving for 3 months. Right after we close here. My heart sank. Oh, come with me. What? Come with me? Portland has theater. You could write, maybe direct something new. We could see what this looks like when we're not sneaking around in empty theaters. The offer was tempting and terrifying in equal measure. I'd never left the city, never taken that kind of risk, never put my personal life ahead of my professional obligations. I have responsibilities here. The theater, my other projects, will still be here when you get back. If you want them to be, and if I don't want them to be. She smiled, that dangerous smile that had started all of this. Then we figure out what comes next. I woke up in my own bed the next morning with sunlight streaming through the windows, and the memory of Megan's lips still tingling on mine. For a moment, I wondered if the entire night had been a dream, the performance, the party, the conversation on stage, the kiss that had tasted like promises and possibility. Then I saw the text message on my phone. Coffee, same place as always. I have something to show you. May threw on clothes and drove to the coffee shop on 5th Street, the one where she'd been watching me every Tuesday for months without my knowing. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in my usual corner booth, 2 cups and a newspaper spread between her hands. "Morning," she said, looking up with a smile that made my stomach flutter. "Please tell me last night wasn't a dream. If it was, we're having the same one." I slid into the booth across from her, immediately noticing the newspaper folded to the art section. "The review?" I asked. 2 reviews, actually. Times and Tribune. She handed me the papers, but I was too nervous to read them myself. "Just tell me," I said. Echoes of Tomorrow is a triumph of intimate storytelling, featuring a breakout performance by newcomer Megan Cross that burns with authenticity and raw emotion. She read from the Times Review. Director Stella Martinez has crafted a deeply personal work that resonates with universal truths about love, identity, and the courage to live openly. I felt tears prick my eyes. Really? Really, and the Tribune says, I quote, Cross and Martinez have created something special here. Production that feels less like theater and more like truth-telling. Truth-telling, I repeated. Appropriate, don't you think? Before I could answer, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression shifted. "Richard?" I asked, my agent. Apparently, the reviews are already generating interest. That's good news. It is. It's also complicated. She set the phone down. She wants to set up meetings, capitalize on the momentum. But most of the opportunities are the same kind of thing projects where my personal life would need to be carefully managed. And I told her I'm not interested in careful management anymore. The coffee shop was filling up with the morning rush, business people grabbing their daily caffeine before disappearing into offices and meetings. Normal people living normal lives, making normal choices that didn't require choosing between love and career, authenticity and opportunity. Do you ever wonder what it would be like? I asked, to be normal, every day. She reached across the table and took my hand. But then I think about how normal people don't get to feel what I felt on that stage last night. They don't get to take someone else's words and make them live and breathe. They don't get to fall in love with brilliant, complicated women who write plays that change people's lives. One play doesn't change. It changed mine. Her phone buzzed again. This time, when she looked at it, she smiled. "Portland," she said. "The director wants to Skype this afternoon. You're really going to do it?" "I'm really going to try." "Question is, are you coming with me?" I looked around the coffee shop at the barista who'd been making my Tuesday morning coffee for 2 years. At the corner booth where I'd written 3 plays and fallen in love with the woman sitting across from me. At the life I'd built that was safe and predictable and suddenly felt too small. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything. What happens if it doesn't work out? Portland, the movie, us trying to build something real outside of this theater bubble we've been living in? Then we'll have tried. We'll have chosen courage. Over convenience, love over logistics. She squeezed my hand. And we'll have done it together. And if I'm terrible at being spontaneous, if I panic and want to come home after 2 weeks, then we come home after 2 weeks, but we still try. I thought about Elena's final monologue, about choosing to live without shame, about the difference between existing and truly living. I thought about the woman across from me who'd walked into my theater and turned my carefully ordered world into beautiful chaos. Okay, I said. Okay, let's go to Portland. Let's see what happens when we stop writing the story and start living it. Her smile was brilliant. Really? Really? But I have conditions. Name them. First, we tell everyone the truth. No more hiding, no more pretending. We're just director and actress who happen to be friends. Done. Second, if this doesn't work out, the movie, Portland. Use, we promise to be honest about it instead of pretending everything's fine. Deal. And third, ... I hesitated, then decided to be as brave as she'd been last night. Third, I love you too. I should have said it last night, but I was scared. I'm still scared, but I love you, and I want you to know that before we do anything else. She leaned across the table and kissed me right there in the crowded coffee shop where she'd been watching me for months, where normal people were having normal Tuesday mornings. When we broke apart, several people were staring, but I didn't care. I love you too, she said. And I promise whatever happens next, it's going to be an adventure.